listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
And we are live from America and just outside the Matrix. And it's time once again for the show that brings you the truth behind the headlines. I'm investigative journalist Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. And once again, it's flipping cold in South Dakota. It's 9 degrees right now, or 8 or so. You know, who really, at a certain point, the difference between 8 and 9 is nothing. There's no difference. But, Rod, we have a great show today. First off, joining us in the first hour, Austin Pelley. He's the co-host of Fault Lines with Thomas and Pelley in the morning, 7 to 10 a.m. East Coast time, right here on Radio Sputnik. And I believe, now we've had Austin on the show briefly, but it's the first time we've ever had him on as a guest, right, Rod? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's great. That'll be a lot of fun. And we'll talk about how things are going with Jamal. And we'll also talk a bit about, he's a young conservative. I'm curious about his perspective on things. I'm going to blast Mitch McConnell here in a minute or so. In case you thought I was going to be nice to him, Rod, that's not happening. Now, by the way, is it on, who do we have today? Is it Carter?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Carter's tomorrow.
Okay, so it's Thursday. Forgive me. So is Wednesday the day that we don't have a co-host?
It alternates Kerry between Carter every other week. You know what I mean? So Wednesday Kerry, Thursday Carter, but every other week. So it's Carter this week.
I see. Okay, I got you. So they're different. They're on different days. Interesting. Okay. That'll confuse my addled brain. In the second hour, we have the great Manila Chan joining us from RT, and there's lots of news to talk with about her, about this whole, and I'm going to blast McConnell and the media on this Russia host, because I think I figured out what's going on with this, Rod. I think I figured out what's going on with the Russian war thing. And I'll talk about the conundrum in 1 second. And, of course, we're taking your calls, 202-521-1320. It's The Backstory. So first, let me talk about the conundrum. And the conundrum we can look at by telling the news. Now, Rod, you saw we had a phone call last week between Zelensky, the head of Ukraine, and Joe Biden that went very badly for the Biden administration, except not as badly as it should have gone, because the Ukraine, Zelensky, the leader of the Ukraine, has said to Biden, calm down. We don't think Russia's about to invade. You saw that. Remember, we talked about that last week, correct?
Yeah, no, we definitely did talk about that. And I think that the media doesn't want to really point out the fact that the president of Ukraine is telling Joe Biden, like, you need to calm down. What you're saying is not right, and you're making things worse.
Well, and even worse than that, one of the opposition leaders in Ukraine really blasted the U.S. and said, U.S. is pushing this because they want to force Ukraine into getting loans, like these IMF loans that we give them, so they can buy weapons. So I'll put it like this. It's almost like a mafia extortion racket where they come into your candy shop or whatever and they say, hey, Rod, this is a lovely new candy store you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to your window. We'd like to sell you protection.
I think I've seen that in Sopranos before.
No, that's exactly right. And it's an old racket. And that's what the U.S. is doing, because the headline now is the U.S. now has 3,000 troops. They originally started by talking about activating 8,000. Then a couple of days ago, they said, no, we're only going to do 1,000. Now they're moving 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And then they're taking 1,000 troops that were in Germany. and they're moving them to Romania, I believe. So they're moving 1,000 troops, then they're moving 2,000 troops from the U.S., and they're doing this as their narrative is falling apart. In other words, the fact that there was this meeting between the Biden administration and Zelensky said, we don't think Russia's about to invade. That should have told the Biden administration, hey, maybe we don't need to put any troops in. Does that make sense? That's what that should have told them, right?
No, I agree with you that. And if we remember, I guess we're going on 2 years ago, President Zelensky told the media that he didn't feel any pressure from the President Trump phone call when he was talking about investigating the Biden. And the media was saying, no, he pressured President Zelensky. But so they don't take President Zelensky's word at all as valid.
No, right. And this is a fantastic point you're making, because actually, if you think about it, Biden is ignoring, and I'll put it like this, on the phone call between Zelensky and Trump, do you remember, because a lot of that phone call ended up getting discussed. Do you remember at any point did Zelensky say to Trump, calm down?
Not at all.
Imagine if that had happened. That would have been, the New York Times would have printed up T-shirts that say calm down in that New York Times fancy font they have. You know what I'm saying? But there's no calm down moment there. There was this here. Now, but I realized what's going on. And by the way, and let me do the part where I said I'd mention Mitch McConnell. Knucklehead Mitch McConnell, the Republican Senate leader and Warhawk, he needs a phone call from everybody listening, especially Republicans. I'm going to talk to Austin Pelley when we talk to Austin about this, how he thinks the Republicans are weathering this, because I think it's disgusting. Republicans, you're disgusting. Elected Republicans, you're disgusting. And you're extra disgusting because you're going along with the narrative being pushed by Biden. Did you see that Mitch McConnell came out and said that Biden's headed in the right direction? And he praised Joe Biden. Did you see that, Rod?
Yeah, we'll have that clip for the second hour when Manila comes on, and I think it'll be interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, well, it's shocking. And it should be a scandal among Republicans, but it's not. So I figured out what's going on, though. So McConnell came out, and we'll play that clip in the next hour, as Rod said, when we have Manila on, and you'll be able to hear it for yourself. In case you want to be disgusted, let me just point out, don't have anything that you throw up easily between now and the next hour, because it might come up. By the way, you were in the medical field for a number of years. But just you personally, Rod, let me ask you, what food is pukey in your experience? Sitting the EMS driver.
That's a good question.
Is it?
Honestly, it is. Because I've seen a lot of people throw up, unfortunately. You know what?
I knew it.
I would have to say French fries. Not that it makes people sick, but it's just something that comes up a lot. So it's French fries.
There we go. French fries. So no fries. Hold the fries right now between now and Mitch McConnell's audio. But I figured out what's going on. This is a successful operation already. Okay? What the Biden administration is doing is successful already because it's an American propaganda operation. Think about it for a second. There's a term that gets used sometimes in public relations. You heard the term free media before?
I have. Yeah, I've heard that before.
So free media is, look, there's two ways you can get media. One's to pay for it, and Tarif is on the line, and we'll get to Tarif in 1 second. But one is to pay for it, advertising. You buy an ad, right? If you want somebody to say something about your product, one way through that door is simple. You just write a check and you buy an ad. But the other way, and often the better way, is through free media. In other words, rather than get someone to mention your restaurant, let's say, or whatever your product is, French fries, whatever you're selling, you could buy an ad, or you could get free media, which is you get a news story planted where they mention your French fry restaurant or whatever. You follow me, Rod? That's free media. So if the CIA, the U.S. government, had said, hey, let's buy ads on every media outlet, and we'll pay for commercials, and we'll have them produced and everything, and we want the ads to say, hey, everyone, this is your friendly U.S. government. We'd like to remind you that Russia is dangerous. Russia are dangerous. It's a dangerous, unpredictable aggressor nation. And then Vladimir Putin guy, he's awful. So remember, Russia's bad and Putin's worse. This message has been brought to you by the U.S. government. You see what I'm saying? If they'd bought that ad and they'd saturated the market and they bought that and they wanted millions of plays where millions of people hear that message constantly. If you call up the Dan Bongino show or the Daily Wire, any of these things that do radio and sell ads, if you wanted to buy advertising that said that would cost you, Rod, I'm going to round it off here, a pretty penny. You see what I'm saying? That would cost a lot of money to buy all those ads. Agreed? Lisa, did we lost Rod or?
No, he's
Saul?
still on. Rod?
Okay. Rod's calculating what a pretty penny is worth. Because the ugly ones aren't. No, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. I didn't warn Rod I'd be interacting with him. That's my bad. But Saul, you'll agree with me. That would be a pretty penny to buy ads on every media outlet to say anything, right? That's a lot of money. On the other hand, if you can get all the media outlets to spew it out themselves, and if they can lie, which is what's going on, and I'm going to be blunt about this, America is lying about Russia and has been for months. It's not even they're sending the troops after some pitched-up rhetoric. It's not like Vladimir Putin banged his shoe on the table, Khrushchev style, and said, hey, Ukraine, we will bury you. Or pointed at them and said, like Keenan Ivory Wayans, I'm going to get you, sucker. He didn't do that to Ukraine. So we're getting these lies repeated over and over, because I listen to the news to prep for the show. Every media outlet, ABC, NBC, NPR, Fox, everyone is repeating the lies, and they all talk about the Russian troops at the border of Ukraine. This is one of the reasons I pointed it out. If someone wanted to say, it's the way they're phrasing it. I pointed this out. It's not that the troops couldn't get to Ukraine if they chose to. And in fact, I'll tell you what else is in the headlines. You can see it if you look for it. They're also talking about how Russia's not backing down. Well, Russia doesn't have anything to back down from. But I will tell you this. Russia did have a carrier group out in the Black Sea doing maneuvers, which is what you do. Your military, the U.S. military, everyone does maneuvers. But they brought that carrier group back. So if someone wanted to say that Russia had backed down, in other words, they actually brought their carrier group off maneuvers, they could have said that. That happened, and nobody's reporting that. They're acting as though, well, Russia's not backing off. That's because Russia doesn't have anything to back off from. I'm going to say it again. This is a lie, and it's been repeated over and over again. And the whole purpose of it is propaganda. And I'll talk about that in a second, but 202-521-1320. Want to make sure we get to Tarif. Tarif, thanks for holding. What's on your mind right now?
Thank you all for taking my call. First, I'd like to say free Julian Assange, free Dunginger, and hashtag no more. I have 3 comments, and my last comment got 2 points to make with it. First comment, Julian Assange and PAC, digital artists, has come out with a non-fungible token where people can trade and buy into whatever to raise funds for his defense. Second comment dealing with the Joe Rogan thing.
No, wait. Before you do that, let me ask Saul something. Because Saul's multifaceted and high-tech. And he's internationally known and known to rock the microphone. Saul, do you do anything with NFTs?
No, I don't.
Do you have an opinion on NFTs? I'm curious.
I think it's garbage. It's a waste of money. It's valueless, and it doesn't do anything for society. And people who play with it are dumb. Sorry.
Yeah. Now you say that just as I'm probably about to do some stuff with NFTs. I'm probably about to issue some myself. Because I've talked about it before, and I tend to agree with you. But let me counter your point slightly, Saul. Yes, they're dumb in a waste, but so are lots of things that are popular. Does that make sense? So I know it sounds cynical, but
just
part
because
of me
something is popular doesn't mean it's good for society or it has value, intrinsic value that's gonna be for the betterment of society. It's just brain drain.
No, I agree with you, but first off, Tarif is correct. The people over at WikiLeaks are jumping on the NFT bandwagon themselves, and they're doing a song. Now, would you say that's good? Is that good?
No opinion on it.
Yeah, but no, I know. Again, I understand your position because I've said it before too. I don't get it, but I'm realizing that I don't get it, and I'm old, so maybe I should get with it since I don't get it. And I'll tell you the idea I have, Saul. Ready? And I'm just going to run this by you, and I'd like your take. But I'm really serious about it. What I may do, so let's say you bought a few NFTs that are JPEGs or whatever, images, okay? 4 or 5 of them. What if I, Lee Stranahan, sold you a VR gallery of those NFTs that you could look at in your Oculus Quest? You follow me? As a way you display your NFTs. Does that sound like a money-making business proposition?
I still don't get it.
No, but imagine.
How does it? It just seems pointless. I'm going to be looking at these JPEGs for what?
Well, but here's the thing. But now you could be looking at them in VR. You follow me? I think the kind of people who are buying NFTs, because I'll tell you, the broad point I was making is, and it's really true, art is kind of stupid as well. If there was no such thing as art, like pictures you could hang on your wall and put them on your wall, and I introduced this new concept of art, pictures you can hang on your wall, someone could come along and say what you said. They said, I don't get it. So wait, so it's not a real landscape. You're not really buying land. Someone took some paint and rendered an image of that landscape, and now you put it on you've already got wallpaper and paint on your wall. Why put art on the wall? And you could say, well, I want to show a friend of mine. They go, well, then take them out where the actual landscape is. Isn't that better? You see what I'm saying? There's an argument that can be made that all art is stupid.
Sure, but there's vision and there's creativity.
And that's where I started to go, well, wait a second. If the whole point... Yeah, go ahead. Say again, Saul, because I can't hear you. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, like, an art is an expression of an individual. It captures creativity, emotion.
But
it's meant to make you feel something. NFTs, it's like it's easily, you can easily duplicate it, and there's no point to it.
Yeah, but so no, I hear you. And like I say, it's not that I disagree, but I'm willing to A, agree, and B, try to cash in on it. Because I've realized in my old age that that's if you want to screw up sometimes, it's thinking, I'll put it like this. P.T. Barnum, I believe, said, no one's ever gone broke underestimating the intelligence of the American people. I believe that was Barnum. And I'm
if you want to make
ready, willing.
if you want to make money, there's a lot of things you can do to make money. And if this is the easiest way or the smartest way without getting into legal trouble, then do it. And
Which I'd like to avoid.
Yeah. Say that again.
Wait, is Church, is he still there, or did he drop?
Yeah, he called back. He had one more point to make.
Okay, yeah, no, good. Yeah, no, I just wanted to make the point about NFTs before we went on with Tarif. Because Tarif, you do call and make so many good points that, and you've noticed this when you come on, people always, we had Carmine Sabia the other day on Carmine Mondays pointing out how awesome you are. But Tarif, what's your second point today? Go ahead.
I have two other good points I'm going to make, two other good comments I'm going to make. The second comment is dealing with Joe Rogan. Biden administration is single-handedly uniting the right and left when people starting to unite to come up in defense of Joe Rogan. The Biden administration is imploding on a world stage with geopolitics. We're dealing with Blinken being outplayed by the Russian diplomat and also the Chinese diplomat. Everybody sat down on the world stage. That's my second comment. My third comment, I got two persons.
No, wait, let me just, wait, before you get that third comment. Because again, you hit me with so many good comments, I got to say something. But Saul, what if I did an NFT of Joe Rogan? Would that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, like a digital port. No, because I could do this. You've seen the digital Shane and Jamal on the set sometimes of our show. I could easily do a digital version of Joe Rogan, a posable digital action figure, if you think about it. And then I could do a portrait. I just think it would combine everything. Okay, and Tarif, keep going. What's your third point? Go ahead.
You just sold FTPs to Saul. You just converted them. But anyway, 2 points for my last comment. It's very important. You have European elections coming up. France, Bulgaria, Hungary, and I think some others, right? Now you got these countries leaning towards the Russians and they are speaking to Putin, or they neutral. So, and also Ukraine, where you got the last part is dealing with Ukraine, where you got rumors that they might overthrow Zelensky. Now, remember when Putin said something 2 or 3 weeks ago, that's it for the color revolutions in Europe? Like Eurasia and things like that. What if the FSB might send in secret information or intelligence reports to these countries in Europe, and also maybe help out Zelensky to make sure they won't be overthrown or the U.S. won't get involved with the European elections, which they might well. The CIA might do it along with the MI6.
Well, we'll see. We've talked about that before, but I don't see that the Zelensky story is having any impact whatsoever. So if they overthrew him, if the U.S. government, by the way, we're certainly not above it. 2014 showed we love a good coup in America. Sure. If we can overthrow a Ukrainian leader and then get lunch, great. That's something we do just casually. But I'm not sure I don't see any signs that that's going to happen. And I certainly don't see any signs that the FSB, the Russian intelligence service, is going to do anything to help them at all. In fact, I'm sure they do stuff. I'm just not sure what they do. Because what they do typically is get lied about. And again, one thing I want to point out about these lies and these narratives, and then we'll get to Ingrid at 202-521-1320. We never back off our narratives. The other narrative we're getting free media on is continued lies about 2014. The news reports, every news report now is amid growing tensions between Russia and Ukraine. First off, there's not growing tensions. If anything, there's debunked tensions. Zelensky said, no, that's not what's happening. We know that. But the other thing that they say, then they go on and say, Russia invaded Crimea in 2014. Russia, which invaded Crimea in 2014, has claimed that they're not planning an invasion. So they'll get in the fact that Russia has not said anything about an invasion, but they like to get in the lies about 2014. A, it's a lie that there was any invasion. There was no invasion. And it's a lie that the big news event out of 2014 was the U.S. and the U.K. overthrew a democratically elected government, aside from the big headline about neo-Nazis, which no one brings up. But 202-521-1320, Ingrid in D.C., what is on your mind?
Well, hey, I called to talk about virtual reality, but since you brought up 2014, I think the other point that is not being made effectively is, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2014, the Russians were perfectly willing to accept Ukraine being a bridge and dealing with both East and West, but it was Europe that delivered this ultimatum that they had to choose or else. And that was then what precipitated the coup. Is that not how it happened?
That's certainly my understanding. We've had Igor Lopatnik on the show, who did a great film about this, which is Ukraine on Fire, that you can watch on Netflix, and you should. That goes into more detail on that aspect. But yes, that's my understanding, Eric. Good point. Now, what was your point of our virtual reality? Because we only got a couple minutes here. Go ahead.
I don't think I got across what I was saying about the metaverse the other day. What I heard talked about was it's being conceived as a place where people would spend real money, buy property in this fictional place. And say it's Rodeo Drive, you could have Stranahan art on Rodeo Drive. And people virtually could be walking down there because it's a fancy street and looking at storefronts, and they'd see your storefront and go, hey, what's this? They'd go in, and you could sell them either erotic art or virtual something or other for real money in that virtual store.
Well, here's the thing about it. So because it's virtual, I hear what you're saying. And what you're talking about is something similar. There was a game's not the right word, but a thing, an experience, a website, Second Life, a few years ago that launched. And Second Life was cool, although the graphics were very primitive. And Second Life was exactly what you're talking about. But here's the thing, because it's virtual, I could go to somebody else's Rodeo Drive, which might make sense if other people are going there. You want that traffic. Or I could just build my own. And I'd rather have ownership because of all the reasons you'd rather have ownership in general. But I know what you're saying, and that is part of the idea in the metaverse. It's sort of a updated version of this game, Second Life. But Second Life had, like, it was a neat idea. It was like, if you think about the name even, Second Life, it's a virtual you, and you get your own virtual space. But the graphics were pretty primitive, and it was very laggy. The technology wasn't quite there, but it was a good idea. But also, the other thing about Second Life was you'd get there and you go, well, this is a mall. So people already, they virtual goods with real money, that already exists in spades. Steve Bannon got into that when he was doing World of Warcraft stuff. And my kids have bought, sometimes purloined, and they play a game called Roblox. They buy stuff in Roblox. People have been buying virtual goods. I'll put it like this. Every video game right now, people are buying virtual goods with real money. In any of these games, Call of Duty or whatever, that allows you to buy DLC, downloadable content, you're eventually buying virtual goods. The Sims is another example of that. You're buying virtual goods with real money. Because it's harder to buy real goods with virtual money, but possible, as NFTs are proving. See what I did there, Saul? It all circle back around. Coming up, we got Austin Pelley joining us. And Manila Chan will be joining us in the second hour. You're listening to Fault Lines. Oops, not Fault Lines. That's the show Austin co-hosts. You're listening to The Backstory.
Want to talk? Get in touch with us at radio@sputniknews.com.
So, Sean, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Bob, that's easy. I want to talk about the need to stop the development of self-driving cars.
Again, Sean, you're driving me nuts. I think the self-driving car thing's already out of the gate.
No, it's never too late. See, now the leading experts in the field, I mean, just pick one, whichever one, leading experts have repeatedly warned us about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Look, I'm telling you, man, we have to stop the robots by any means necessary.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Tune into our show By Any Means Necessary daily from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Radio Sputnik. And don't forget to call in at 3:20 p.m. to our studio number 202-521-1320.
And if you miss us live, check us out on SputnikNews.com, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date on the latest political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us.
Feeling kind of blue, but maybe also kind of red, and kind of purple, and kind of alone? You've got a friend on Radio Sputnik. Tune into Political Misfits from 12 to 2 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, for news, politics, and culture without the two-party bias. Catch us daily on 105.5 in Washington, D.C., or 102.9 or 104.7 in Kansas City. Or find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your news.
Are you bored? Are you lonely? Do you need a hug? Well, we can't give you that, but we can keep you up to date on Radio Sputnik.
And we're back, 105.5 FM, AM 1390. I'm Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. What I should have done, by the way, Saul, just so you know, when I screwed up right before the break there, and I said, as I do sometimes, I'll say fault lines. Because you know what? For years, that's what I said. For literally 4 or 5 years, I would say the tag would be fault lines. So I say it in my sleep sometimes. Does that make sense, Saul?
Yeah, I said it in my sleep too. Fault lines.
Sure. Now, sure. It's easy. It's fun to say, too. But what I should have done there is that when I said, you're listening to fault lines, the way I should have recovered is I should have said, you're listening to fault lines. Co-host Austin Pelley coming up right after this on The Backstory. See what I did there? I just should have kept going with it. Well, I wasn't last, because what I did last time, I think, well, I said, oops. I may have actually said oops out loud. Possible. But I called attention to my screw-up. But that'll happen, too, occasionally. But Saul,
that means you're human. You're not an NFT.
One of the parts of the multifacetedness of Saul Saul, are you still doing improv, or are you an ex-improv performer?
I'm on and off right now.
I'll tell you what I'm thinking of doing. I'm thinking of here in Sioux Falls teaching. I've taught improv too. When I lived out in New Mexico, I taught improv. And believe it or not, I'm a damn good improv teacher. And at my age, no one needs to see me doing tag freeze. Does that make sense? No one wants to watch a nearly 57-year-old man, doing whatever tag freeze position. You know how that goes. But no one needs to see me do. No one needs to see a nearly 16-year-old doing Emotional Symphony, because I've seen it.
Right.
We occasionally would have old people. In the improv troops you've been in, we'll get to Austin Pelly in a second. Have you had occasional old people in the troupe?
Yeah. We have
No?
like the whole age range, like young people, old people, and yeah, it's a great community. Because you have to be vulnerable, and improv can be a great therapeutic tool for a lot of people.
Yeah, and
So
that's one of the reasons I like teaching. It's also a good actor's tool. And one of the things I was good at teaching in the class is I really got people to start doing good scene work. Because at that point in New Mexico, the show Breaking Bad was filming out there. And a lot of people were trying to get hired on Breaking Bad. And again, doing tag freeze or emo symphony or something may not help you get on Breaking Bad, but doing good scene work. And so I was able to help people do very good realistic scene work, which is what I did, believe it or not, is I focused people in scenes on not playing to the jokes. I focused people in scenes on playing to the reality of the situation and then finding jokes out of that. Does that make sense, Saul?
Yeah, truth in comedy, right?
Yeah, so it was good. And it's possible I'll do that in Sioux Falls. Also, when you teach, they pay you. So if I got to show up someplace, it's nice to get a little scratch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to when you're doing improv, you're the one paying.
Right.
But
I think Austin's showing up for free right now.
Yes, we're going to get to Austin Pelly right now. Austin Pelly, of course, is the new co-host of Fault Lines, now with Pelly and Thomas, 7 to 10 a.m. every morning, Monday through Friday, right here on Radio Sputnik. Hey, Austin, how you doing?
Hello, Lee. It is a great day to be a commie.
Is it? Now, why do you, are you?
Well,
has something changed? I was not aware of.
Who are living in D.C. now. We all are.
No, wait, why do you say that?
Because our football team has come out as the Washington Commies.
Oh, I saw that. The Commanders, see, right? But you know what? My head did the same thing as you, which is, they were called the Redskins. Can we say that? Because that was their name. So I'm going to take the liberty of saying it. They were called the Redskins for a long time. Then they became the Washington football team, which was the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, not as stupid as the Commanders.
Yeah, and now they're the Commanders. So you're not a fan of the name? You're not going out and buying Commander paraphernalia?
Let's just say no one is happy with this name. It seems like out of the entire list, people were predicting what it could be. People were a little bit more excited for Red Hogs, or Armada sounded cool as well. The Commander refers to Commander-in-Chief of the president. So, and also they wanted to have some military ties. So I get what they did. It's also the only 3-syllable name in the NFL now. So it makes it sound really weird compared to other names. And yes, you can say Redskins because that was their name in their video release of on Twitter and on YouTube and other platforms. of them coming out with this name change. They referred to themselves as Redskins multiple times, and then they were showing like a transition, like now it's time for the new thing, and that's the Commanders. But yes, while they were the Redskins, so effectively they were called the Skins by their fans and even just football fans in general. The shortened version of the longest name in the NFL is going to be the Commies.
It could be the Commies. Let me make another suggestion, is the Durs. Right? Because that would also be grammatically appropriate. But the Durs, I had a girlfriend who used to say "dur" instead of "duh." But she's not wrong. It's just a different way to do it. But I think the Durs could be what it is. We'll see. Do you think children are going to grow up talking about the Commanders or whatever, the Durs, the Commies? Can you imagine that? Imagine being a child who's a sports fan. Go ahead, Austin. Imagine.
Yeah, no. Actually, it's rather good news for me because I'm a Cowboys fan who rivals the Washington team pretty hard. So, I mean, we're fine. It's such infighting. What the general consensus is: the new uniforms, clean. They look great. The new name, I don't think I've seen a single positive comment on those videos, on the releases, on Twitter. Everyone's losing their mind about it.
Now, it was great when Washington was the Redskins because you could get a matchup. It was the Cowboys versus the Redskins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was a legit matchup that would happen sometimes. And that makes perfect sense. But you would root for the Cowboys in that matchup, right?
Well, yes, I would root for the Cowboys in any matchup.
There we go. So, but now, let me put it like this. This is my suggestion, and they didn't go with it, Austin, for some reason. But to match the Cowboys, I was suggesting the Washington Proud Boys as the football team name. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that one probably would get shot down a little bit more than Redskins with the backlash it would get. So,
okay, how about this? The Washington Insurgents.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
But it's a better name than the Commanders.
They were talking about Red Tails for a while, and that was referring to, I believe, a Black Airmen group. And I think most of the people that were surveyed here were like pretty on board with that change.
Yeah, the other name they didn't go with is the Washington Smallpox Blankets. That was on the, because they wanted to make, I'll put it like this, if you're doing sports reparations, the Trail of Tears, let's say that. What if they'd gone with that as a football team name? Then at least you're making up for the years of Redskins. You see what I'm saying? Nobody gets anything. You just get a dumb name.
Yeah. But the point isn't to fix what they saw as an injustice, because if there isn't backlash, then they won't do anything about it. The point is to fade out of the of the limelight of these scandals that have come out with it and the report that came last year about the toxic work environment and everything. So they couldn't even keep Washington football team because they're trying to distance themselves from that.
The Washington Indigenous People, what if that was the football team name?
That sounds a little bit worse than the Washington football team. It sounds like they're just trying to be PC, and I'm not for it.
Okay, now let me ask you this. What's been your take? We talked about, we'll play the clip when Manila's on next hour, but Mitch McConnell, you do the news every day over on Fault Lines. And I think you'll agree with me, working for Sputnik, one of the advantages is it's not that no one comes in the morning and tells you nothing, right? There's no instructions on how to cover the Ukraine-Russia story, correct?
Yes.
But you have the freedom to say what you want about it, and you don't have to say the BS that the rest of the media is saying about it. So as you've watched this situation build up, do you agree with me, Austin? And again, feel free not to, but I'm just going to ask it that way because I want to be clear. Do you agree with me that this is a lie being put forth by the Biden administration that Russia's about to invade Ukraine? I'm saying it's a lie. I've seen no proof of that at all. In fact, the opposite. What are you seeing, Austin Pelley?
Well, that's a very deep question. Do I think that they're ready to invade? That I would have to side with you that that's a lie. I mean, when you have the primary contentious country, like Ukraine would be the target if there is an invasion. When you have the country that you're supposed to be aligned with and defensively protecting, deliberately call you out and say that your media is making it so it is way more dangerous of a situation than it even is. We're here and we're not seeing what you're seeing, but yet you're reporting it like we're all about to die. And you need to tone it down because you're scaring our public. And the fact that Zelensky said that, while at the same time, I believe like that hype helps him, right? Because it doesn't help him beat Russia. He's never going to beat Russia. But at the very least, he's getting in weapons. He's getting in money from Western countries. So he can like ride that out as much as possible. Do you know how bad it would have to be in Ukraine for him to make that statement to the U.S. to say, hey, tone it down? It's just it's crazy how much we're pushing this with someone else's lives on the line.
No, right. Now, but unfortunately, the Republicans, have you seen a single solitary Republican even say, like, I'm calling it a lie because I like blunt Anglo-Saxon terms like that. So I assume lies Anglo-Saxon, could be French or Roman or something, I don't know. But I like bluntness on stuff like this because they're being blunt and saying Russia's about to invade. So I'm being blunt and saying, you're a liar. No, they're not. But I haven't seen, even if I wanted to say it in a more politic way, I would say, so far the evidence we have does not correlate with the Biden administration's claim that Russia is about to invade. Putin has said the opposite, and even Ukraine has said the opposite. So that's a nice way to put it. I haven't seen any Republican politician, not one, come out and tell the truth about this. Am I missing something, Austin? And what do you think of that? As someone who is, you're conservative, that's safe to say, right?
Yes. Yes, I am. I think, see, if I'm being totally fair to the situation, I understand where we're coming from. Because there are a massive amount of troops, and Jamal and I disagree on what the definition of how close to the border really becomes the border. They're about 250 kilometers from the border, and that means that they could mobilize within like 3 to 5 hours, let's say, and invade Ukraine. So I would call that on the border. So they do have a massive amount of troops on the border. But the problem is they're not in offensive positionings. They're in defensive positioning. So then they'd have to restructure for maybe a couple of days and move some battalions around for them to then invade Ukraine. So while it's not imminent.
Let me argue with you on that point, too. It's not on the border. That's a lie. It is not on the border. The way they're saying it, it implies, and I've heard people say right on the border in the media. It does not imply hundreds of miles away. And let me say this. Russia is on the border of Ukraine. They share a border, right?
Mm-hmm.
How far away from Ukraine do Russian troops need to get? Because they're in their own country. They're not advancing that way. And you're pointing out, and we've had Scott Ritter on the show, and he says a similar thing. Yeah, they can get there in a few hours. But you know what? The way Russia could avoid that is cowering their own troops further in Sadevsk, the other side of Moscow. They're in their own country. They're not advancing. So I don't see why. Where do they have? How far do they have to be for them to not be on the border when they're actually literally then they share a border.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that they're advancing, but they are within 250 kilometers of that border, which I would say constitutes, especially with the size of the two, I would say constitutes on the border.
So give me an approximate number of how far, where would they have to be for you to not be willing to say that, for you to go, nope, that they're not. And do we do that? Does the U.S. say, you know what, we don't want to have troops too close to Canada or Mexico?
No, I'm not saying that we would do that by any stretch.
So about how far do you think they'd need to flee into Russia? Because they're already in their own country and not advancing. So how far would they have to go into Russia before you could safely say, no, they're not on the border?
I would say probably when they're closer to Moscow than Kiev, I would say that they are not on the border. Now, that being said, while I would go and subscribe to the definition of them being on the border, and we have differing opinions on that, I still think that they're not doing anything wrong with moving troops within their own country. So I'm not saying that if they move troops closer to Kiev while still in Russian territory, or closer to Moscow while still in Russian territory, I'm not commenting on that. All I'm saying is I would say border while you wouldn't.
Well, no, and here's why I wouldn't. Far from the border, as you would be in Jackson, Mississippi. Is Jackson, Mississippi on the border of Orlando, Florida? No, it's the same distance. And if I'll use your standard, the troops are in Yelnya. Yelnya is closer to Moscow than it is to Kiev. Period. That's where they are. And I got Yelnya out of a Reuters article. So they're already closer to Moscow than they are to Kiev. But I listened to it, I didn't see anything. I listened to a news report at NPR this morning where they're showing bomb shelters in Kiev. And they're saying, we don't know if these Soviet-style bomb shelters are sufficient against the Russian invasion. So again, they're already closer. The troops are already closer to Moscow than to Kiev.
Right? Which city were you saying they were in? Because I mean, we're hearing between, and I obviously don't know a number, between 100,000 and 200,000 troops. So that many stationed in one city might be hard to believe.
No, it's actually not, because Fort Bragg, as I pointed out yesterday, Fort Bragg has 250,000 people and about 54,000 active duty troops in North Carolina. So we have bases like Fort Bragg, where these 2,000 soldiers, by the way, are coming from, that have 250,000 people, but they're not all troops. Some of them are administrative personnel or whatever. They're in a place called Yelnya. Yelnya, Y-E-L-N-Y-A. And I got them from looking at Western reporting on it. Reuters said the troops are in Yelnya. So then I said, well, let me do the next thing and look up where Yelnya is. Yelnya is also the home of a permanent base. They've got a base there already, and that's existed there for a while. And it was also the site of a battle in World War II. So as I looked into this a little bit, and it's sort of out in the middle. It's much closer to Belarus than it is to Ukraine. But now they're using that and saying, well, see that they could come down through Belarus. Well, again, that's fine, but that's not the border. I don't know, again, if they're on the border, then Jackson, Mississippi is on the border of Orlando, because it's the same distance. I looked it up. It's the same distance. And I've been to Jackson and I've been to Orlando. They're not that. And the picture that's painted with on the border is not hundreds of miles away. And this is, as I say, it's a propaganda technique. Now, if someone had said Russia has troops within striking distance of Ukraine, for instance, or something like that. I'd go, okay, I guess that's true, but they're not on the border.
Okay,
and they're not amassed on the border.
So I'm looking at all this now, and while, okay, I will submit to it them being closer to Moscow than Kiev, because it seems like it's about 500 kilometers to Moscow and about 900 to Kiev. If you look at actually going to the border, well, I'm confused now where this 150 mile mark, 250 kilometers, 300 kilometer mark came from then, because I'm looking at it and seeing that, okay, they're about 350 kilometers. If they're in that city that you're saying or town, then they're about 350 kilometers from the border. So not Kiev, but the border.
Right. The closest point in Ukraine where you could you could do the game everyone likes to do at the Canadian border, which is, you know, I've done this in the New Mexico-Texas border. Have you ever stood at a point where there's a border and you're standing on one side and then you put your foot on the other side of the, you know, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Illinois, Indiana. Pick a state. Right? Where you're in one place and you put your foot on the other side. You know what I'm talking about, Austin?
I know what you're talking about. I haven't done it, but yes.
Yeah, but it's fun. And New Mexico, Texas is a pretty good one because it's, you know, there's actually a restaurant, I forget the name of it, at the New Mexico, Texas border. It may have been a barbecue place that I like. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it. But there was a restaurant I've been to where, like, the dining room, if you, like, the bar is in New Mexico, but the kitchen's in Texas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The border literally, the border splits down the middle of the restaurant. Because, of course, borders are arbitrary anyway, right? So, you know, it's just, it's generally not a geological, like there's a mountain, a river. Sometimes there is, but often it's just this side's the border and that side. So that's what I think they mean. The closest that you could possibly come and technically be in Ukraine is about 120 miles, according to the calculations I've done. But it is clearly closer to Moscow than it is to Kiev. And they're talking about Kiev being invaded, right? I think this is why Zelensky said, calm down, because that's where the troops are. And by the way, again, Reuters is the one I read that about back in December, because they've been talking about this forever. But go ahead, Austin. Did you have something else on that?
I mean, not really. I don't think anyone was saying that, like, well, I don't know. Actually, the American media is having a blast with this one, but about Russia invasion means that means that Kiev falls in a day. So while I think that Russia would have the military capability to do that, I haven't heard from mainstream media that far yet. I think what's likely happening, I mean, I think we've got a loaded gun in the Donbass. And I think that if America wants to go to war at any time, which seems less and less likely, we can just point to any pro-Russian person that fires a single bullet, which bullets have already been flying in Donbass, and say, oh, look, Russia invaded, let's go.
Right. And no, I agree. That's where it is. But hey, Austin, we're out of time. Great appearance. Thanks for coming on. Congratulations on co-hosting Fault Lines, 7 to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, every day during the week, at least, not weekends, because Austin's got to rest sometime, right? You do. Because you got to get ready for those Commanders games. Go Commanders. Austin Pelly. We got Manila Chan next hour. Let's take a short break here on The Backstory.
listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
And we're back. It is time for the second hour, final hour today of the best damn radio show in the world. The show that brings you the truth behind the headlines. It's The Backstory. Once again, I want to thank the great Austin Pelley for joining us for a segment I like to call Border Bicker. What do you think of that, Saul?
Yeah, that's what it was.
But, you know, I'm going to talk about the border bicker there for a second and why Sputnik is awesome and why the rest of the media sucks. But I'm going to point out that this hour we got the great Manila Chan joining us from RT on The Backstory. Now, I want to point out something. You just heard more actual discussion about the issue of the border, not from people taking the same side. Austin, I'll put it like this. Austin Pelley from Fault Lines was being, in my opinion, more fair about the situation than anybody on the mainstream media. They don't even point out. They just say the border. These knuckleheads in the mainstream media promoting this lie over and over. And the reason they're saying on the border is they want you to think that Russian troops are right there. There's an imminent threat, which is a harder word to say than you might think. But there's an imminent threat. And we've had guests like Scott Ritter and Mark Frost sort of make the same point that Austin's making, which is no, well, they can get there within 3 to 5 hours. And my point is, first off, if I'd heard a single solitary, one of them, one mainstream news report make the argument that these guys have made, well, while they're not exactly right, it's not like they're a few feet away, but they are 3 to 5 hours away. You know what? That's the best case you can make that the troops are on the border. And I haven't heard the best case on mainstream media. I've heard the best case for the, I'm going to say this what it is. The Biden administration's position has been argued for better by Scott Ritter, Austin Pelley, and Mark Frost right here on Sputnik than Jen Psaki's ever made it. Because these knuckleheads in the press room and Jen Psaki, they don't want anybody to look too closely at this. They keep saying on the border because they want people to believe that they're right next door.
Hey, Lee.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I got an update for you. Jen Psaki just said today that they're not going to say the word imminent anymore. She said her, the president, and other people have said it maybe once, maybe just once, but that they're not using that word anymore.
So they're not saying it's imminent. But again, you know what? Listening to the news, I challenge anyone, go listen to the news. They're making it seem like it's imminent. So they're not going to say that because Zelensky embarrassed them, right? And they want to be able to say, and I have not heard one media source point out what you just pointed out, Rod. I'm not saying it's not accurate. I'm saying I believe it's 100% accurate. But the media is not telling people, the Biden administration, here, I'll do it NPR style. Hang on a sec. I gotta reset myself. Because you'll understand this, Saul. Saul, if I say I need to get into character, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I need to do the NPR thing. I need to get my posture slightly different. And I need to get myself in that mindset, like I'm on Quaaludes is the mindset. Live from Washington, D.C., I'm Lee Stranahan. You're listening to NPR. How was that, Saul? How was that? Did you
I thought
feel
I was listening to NPR.
Right.
Amazing.
So that's So no, see, I know how to do it, but I literally have to adjust my mindset because, as anyone knows, and I'll just say this, I'm going to be blunt, and I don't want to disappoint anybody, all the legions of fans out there, but I'm not as spazzy in real life. Now, Saul, you've dealt with me in real life. When I'm off the air, I'm a little spazzier on the air, aren't I? I'm a little more hyped up on the air, aren't I?
A little bit, yeah. But you're pretty spazzy in real life too. No, I'm kidding. I'm pretty chill.
No, but you know what I mean. When I go on the air and I'm doing this show, I go into my radio personality. Because I don't walk around saying 105.5 FM, AM 1390 in that radio, I don't know, whatever the hell it is, tone normally. So to get into the NPR tone, it's a matter of I got to adjust and go, I got to hear it in my head first. I have to imagine it. Live from Washington, D.C., I'm Lee Stranahan. This is All Things Lied About. And then I got to picture the music and everything else. Now, so it's an act, the same way me doing the show regularly is an act. What I mean by that is when I go out to a restaurant, I realized this, I was out with one of my girlfriends, Danny, out here in South Dakota, and I realized that I'm hard to hear often. Like, I was at a restaurant or something like that, and the waitress was like, what? And I'm like, few people say that on the radio to me. Because I'm kind of shouting into the microphone sometimes. But I don't do that in real life. But if I get into that NPR thing, they're never explaining. You're not going to hear live from Washington, D.C. I'm Lee Stranahan. This is NPR. The Biden administration today said they will stop using the phrase imminent threat when describing Russia's aggression on the border of Ukraine. You're not hearing that from anybody. Nobody's saying that. So, Rod, great job pointing out what Jen Psaki said, and great job being able to listen to her. She is an irritating woman. Am I right, Rod?
That's an understatement. I'm pretty sure, no offense to any ladies are out there or anything, but I'm pretty sure her husband's happy when she goes to work.
Right. She's a kind of a shrew. Right?
I'm not sure. I've never really heard that word. I would say she's kind of a word we can't say on the air.
Okay, yeah, that's true too. But we can't imply it. It's a word that applies to female dogs, I assume. Correct, Rod?
Yeah.
There we go. And by the way, I'm not even sure because that's a word they've been saying. The B word. They've been saying the B word on TV since like the 70s. Like, Joan Collins on Dynasty, I think. Am I thinking of the right person? Oh, I got to talk about the Whoopi thing, but I want to get to Brave first. I'll talk about the Whoopi Goldberg thing and free speech in a second after we talk to Brave, 202-521-1320. Brave, what is on your mind, sir?
Hey, how's it going? Maybe I should have called a little bit later because the Whoopi thing, I want to say that the misinformation that Whoopi spread hurt me. I was hurt by it. I was hurt. I just want to say that, and it's very ironic that now she finds herself on the side of being canceled. But that aside, I was actually calling to talk about the whole Russia and the whole Russia-U.S. war narrative and the way it's being covered. Do you remember David Icke?
Of course, yes. David Icke, former footballer from the UK, who did the best presentation about the roundtable groups that I've ever seen. And you can't find it on YouTube anymore, but it was great. But yeah, David Icke, we'd love to get him on the show. So put in a word for us, Brave. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll text him right now. But so I'm sure that you remember a while back, and it seems like it's been a decade now with COVID, but a while back when David Icke was talking about to push along the idea of a global control over the economy and things of that nature. And it's all considered conspiracy theory, right? But still, to point it out that that the West would end up going to war or creating a war with Russia and China to to topple and totally destroy our own economy to give, I guess, room for what we're actually considering now the Great Reset and what they've actually said.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that David Icke is largely considered a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not so much trying to say that, oh, David Icke is right or David Icke is not that. I'm just using that to point out that line of thought and what we're actually seeing, because everybody keeps covering this war thing like it's just because Biden's tanking and Biden's sucking, and like it just came about now. But it seems to me, and I think you guys were talking about it the other day, if you look back at our activity with Russia and our media, and when we've been handling Russia, even going back to Trump, it seems like this thing has been set up a while back, and the media's been perpetuating it. And I guess what you would call the deep state has been pushing aggression with Russia and obviously China for some time now. And to me, that seems like the very idea of what manufactured consent is. Whereas you keep on representing this in the media, you keep on propagating this narrative, and the people start accepting it. And then when they decide to go ahead and launch their war efforts against Russia or do a false flag to make it a wag the tail thing to make it seem like Russia actually did something, now we have to go to war. That just seems perfectly in line with the type of things that we always do, especially when you look at Iraq. So I just don't think that it...
Well, Brave, let me just say this, because I pointed out on Twitter, you're making a very good point here, and let me amplify it. There are three things going on about this Russia war narrative lie that's being pushed by the administration. There are two fronts meeting here. One of them is Joe Biden's fealty to a Russian oligarch named Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who hates Putin and wants revenge after Putin put him in prison, and is very clear about this. And when I say his fealty, anyone can look up Senate Resolution 322. Biden's got connections with Khodorkovsky going back to 2005, clearly on paper. Now, the other thing going on is that is meeting this decades-long CIA involvement in Ukraine on the side of neo-Nazis. So those two things have smashed into each other. Khodorkovsky, who, Joe Biden is Khodorkovsky's B word. Let me put it like this in Joan Collins speak. And has been since 2005, at least on paper. Go look up Senate Resolution 322. You'll see it. That's meaning this Ukraine narrative where the CIA and the United States deep state have supported Nazis, and I've talked about that before. Those two things are meeting. And the other thing it's meeting here is, to a minor extent, the low approval numbers that Biden has and the fact that, but I agree with what you're saying. There's something much deeper going on, and I just put what it is. And the Ukrainian thing, let me say this too. I'm going to start referring to them this way. There's a segment of the Ukrainian population that has a cult-like devotion to a neo-Nazi, to a Nazi collaborator. That would be Stefan Bandera, who we've talked about a number of times. But I don't know what else to do except to call it a cult-like devotion. Because let me ask you this, Rod. Rod, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I want to ask you a question. Okay, let me ask you something. You like me, right, Rod? You like me well enough, right?
Yeah, right.
Right? Have you ever taken a picture of me and framed it and walked down the street publicly hugging that picture?
No, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
Right. It's not going to happen. Right. Because you liked me well enough. So what I'm saying is, have you seen plenty of pictures of Ukrainians holding a framed picture of Stefan Bandera and hugging it to their chest and doing a parade? You've seen those, right?
Oh yeah, the past few years I've seen them. And today's the February 2nd, a month ago, about almost a month ago. There was January 1st. Saw more videos of them marching for Bandera, and it's kind of a little weird that some people have so much love for this guy, but it is what it is.
So if I call it a cult-like devotion, you know what I'm saying. To me, just the parts where they're hugging, and I'll take it a step further, Rod. Let's say somehow it possessed you to get a picture of me, frame it, and then hug it to your chest and walk down the street with it. Let's say that was going on. Now what would it take to get you to get other people to do it? To walk up to Saul and go, hey, can you get a picture of Lee like this and join me? Let's all walk down the street together. And it's a little dark out. Can someone light a tiki torch? Right? That's a cult, correct?
No, I think that's the definition of a cult.
Right. So this group of Ukrainians has a cult-like devotion to a Nazi collaborator. And again, I'm going to be blunt. That's the way I'm going to define them. You'll start hearing those phrases, cult-like devotion. And I don't want anyone to be confused. When you're hugging a picture of somebody and you're not sleeping with them, even, I'll put it like this, even if, you've been in love, right, Rod?
I'm in love right now.
You're in love right now. Is there any hugging pictures against your chest walking down the street going on?
No, not at all.
Right. And you know what? If the person you're in love with, a good girl, said to you, just saying, said to you, hey, Rod, why don't you ever frame a picture of me and cleave it to your chest and walk down the street with it? That relationship would be over at that point, correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe that after that night.
Right. Okay. Right. Because you need some. And would you walk down the street before the pre-makeup sex, or would you after?
I'd walk her to the Uber afterwards. So yeah.
I'm just saying. Would you even walk into an Uber with a picture of your girlfriend cleaved to your chest? And by the way, these are not minor pictures. You know, this is not like you've got a locket around your neck and it's a heart and it opens up and her picture's in there.
No, these are like banners. They're banners.
These are big pictures of Bandera. I'll put it like this. If Bandera was really as big as he's pictured in these pictures, he's got a head like Burger King. Am I right? It's freaky.
Yeah, they're big. They're big banners. They're like it's almost like a sporting event when January 1st. Like I said, it's real weird seeing it. I don't understand it. I don't know anybody personally who's a Banderite, but seeing it is just weird. But that's what they do over there, and that's what they like. So,
and nobody. I've never seen. I've looked for it on YouTube. I've never seen a video of anybody going up to them on January 1st and going, dudes, what are you doing? This is creepy. What are you doing here? What's up with this? Why are you guys cleaving a picture? And so that's what I will call cult-like devotion. So there are a number of Banderites. Anybody who calls himself a Banderite, sorry, you're in a cult that is as frightening as any cult I've ever seen. Sorry, because that's weird. Hugging the picture of him as you march down the street with your tiki torch buddies. Someone needs an intervention. You know what I'm saying? They need to get on that. Remember that reality show? They need to do an intervention. Hey, whatever a good Ukrainian first name is, Mikhail, whatever. I don't know. Your family, they brought you here today because they've noticed you walking around with a photo of Bandera, painting that you apparently commissioned, a giant painting of this guy cleaved to your chest, and your family's concerned about you. Look, your grandma's crying. How do you feel about that, Mikhail? So those two things are going on. Biden's hookup with a cult. Even the MEK people, I haven't seen It's close. But even the MEK people aren't that creepy. They're kind of creepy. You know what they do? You've seen the footage of, it's on YouTube, of Rudolph Giuliani. Just type in Rudy Giuliani, MEK. You've seen the footage of him arriving in Albania at the MEK compound. Right, Rod?
Yeah, I've also seen him at another MEK, I guess it was a rally in D.C., I believe. And he just seems like a real oddball, sticks out of the crowd of people.
And let me ask you this, too. Just, again, I don't want to get, if this is too much into your personal life, feel free to stop me. But have you ever had a large group of people approach you and hand you a single flower? It's
No,
never
never
to you.
happened.
Right. And you know what I'm saying? They do that in that footage in Albania, Rudy Giuliani. It's a large group of people, including a fair number of attractive women, because there's nothing, Persian women, nothing wrong with Persian women at all. They look like Disney princesses. But if a large group of Persian women approach you and they all hand you a single flower, we're starting to get into Manson territory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd be looking out for the red dot on my head if someone's handed me all these flowers.
And that footage, I'm not making it up. You saw all the women walk up and hand him a single flower. You noticed that, right?
Yeah, and he was a big grin on his face, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, that's weird. If you land at the airport and that happens, have you ever been to Hawaii, Rod?
Unfortunately, no, not yet.
Okay. I've been to Hawaii, and you do get laid when you get there, by which I mean, of course, they hand you a lei. They do that.
I knew what you meant when you said that, but yeah.
But it's true. When you get off the plane and you go through, it's a very nice kind of tropical airport. And the things you see on the Brady Bunch or whatever, where they hand you a lei, that actually does happen when you go to Hawaii. Although it's got to be irritating if you just live there. I'm sure some, because I know the people I know who lived in Hawaii could afford it. It's people like Roseanne Barr. Roseanne's got a place. Roseanne, that B word. Let me say something about Roseanne. She once sent me, and I've had this happen with Beth Chapman, who we lost, R.I.P. Dog Bounty Hunter's wife, friend of mine, Beth Chapman. Roseanne once sent me a video, and again, I'm in a place where it's now 8 degrees, and I think this is cruel of Roseanne. Tell me I'm not wrong here, Rod. By the way, Al Killer will get to you in a second. She just sent me a picture of her estate in Hawaii and how nice the weather is.
No, well, I mean, she was just sharing, I guess. I don't think she was trying to rub it in your face. She was just sharing.
Okay, now be honest. Roseanne was trying to rub it in. That's why you send something like that.
Well, since you guys are friends, yes, it was a little bit of sharing, a little bit of na boo boo.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Because I've had, Beth used to do that sometimes. She'd just say, hey, I want you to look at the gorgeous sunset right now from her hot tub or whatever. Lanai, whatever's going on there. But a couple other friends of mine who live there, Jen, who calls in sometimes, I believe Jen lived there briefly. And she's not Roseanne wealthy, of course, who is? Or Dog, these are celebrities, so they have some money. But Hawaii's a very tough place to live because gas on a good day is like $9 a gallon. I'm only slightly exaggerating. It's very expensive. So there we go. 202-521-1320. Owl Killer, come save us from this mess. Go ahead.
So you did. I listened to you on Alex the other day. That was a great segment. Even though he was trying to get more to the current events of what's going on, and you're going into the history of the whole Russia-Ukrainian issue. But I think, especially bringing up that Senate Resolution 322, because I saw the comments on Rumble. A lot of people they looked it up. They had no idea about that. So
right.
You're familiar.
And by the way, let me just say this, Al Killer. The reason they have no idea is all of you cowards in conservative media. Senate Resolution 322 is the story that you're waiting for that nobody's covered. It's just a fat, juicy story sitting right out there. There's no question Joe Biden sponsored this Russian oligarch. Right, Owl Killer?
Not only did he sponsor it, you literally got a choice between Rothschild banker on the Republican Party, John McCain, and Rothschild banker Barack Obama before anybody heard about him. Clearly, I mean, it's right. It's what conspiracies are made of. Yeah, I mean, you
see what you see what I mean by that's a juicy story.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure you bring up conservative media. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Michael Savage, who no longer is on 770 AM in New York. At the time, I think he was number 2 to Rush Limbaugh throughout the entire country. He's as far as conservative media goes, he's always kind of been the outcast. When I believe Rush Limbaugh's brother is the agent for Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, of course, when he was alive. And, he
David?
was on the
Is that David?
Yeah, I believe.
David Limbaugh?
Yeah, and I mean, Michael Savage is banned from Fox News for whatever reason. He's he was great friends with Laura Ingraham, and she told him she would have him on, and he's not allowed on. I believe he even called Rupert Murdoch Rupert Moloch one time, and that's why he thinks he's banned from it.
Whoa.
But yeah. So he was on.
Well, let me just say this, Owl Killer. Tonight with Jason Goodman on my Patreon show that I do with Jason, I'm talking about Fox News. That's what the whole topic is already said. And we'll be talking about Murdoch and everything and going a deep dive in it on High Dive with Jason Goodman tonight. So great job bringing that up, but keep going.
So he was on Newsmax. So he has like a 3 to 5 minute segment, like about 3 times a week on Newsmax. And he's bringing up, he's like, okay, you guys that are beating this war drum with Ukraine and Russia. He's like, what would happen if Russia put missiles in Mexico or Canada? What would our reaction be? And the Newsmax host he gets that, but it's their whole, the sophistication behind like what and what the average host knows. He just doesn't want Putin dictating our policy. That is the juxta of what he is. That's why he's for us getting involved in Ukraine, and it's just that type of elementary thinking that just because if we agree to the resolution that Russia has requested that that NATO stop expanding, that we're giving in to Putin's demands. But I mean, there's no empathy of putting yourself in the other person's position, and we would never accept it. And it's just because we're geographically blessed where we don't have enemies on our border, we've never had to deal with a situation like this, but this is everything to Russia. And then you see the response of sending 2,000 or 3,000 troops. What are 2,000 or 3,000 troops going to do? I mean, it's literally if something were to break out, you're setting them up for a slaughter, basically just to involve us in a bigger war.
No, it is a mess, and that's why that's why I'm doing this thing on Fox tonight with Jason talking about it. But it's also why I came up with the phrase, and you heard me riffing on it earlier, but the cult-like devotion to a Nazi collaborator part. I've been trying to think of phrases that I can put that sum up what's going on very concisely. Because the thing I realized about doing Alex Jones' show the other day was that although I know the material down cold and I'm completely right on it, that I need a punchier presentation. And so Khodorkovsky is now Biden's oligarch in my parlance. Does that make sense, Owl Killer? We don't have Owl Killer on, but that's fine. So let me explain marketing to everybody. What's one of the free things you get here? Apple, the company that makes the iPhone and Mac and everything else, Apple's very good at marketing. And let me explain. By the way, Saul, have you ever read the Walter Isaacson biography of Steve Jobs?
Yeah, I read it.
You liked it, right? It was a great book, correct?
Yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I would recommend.
Like I was iffy on, but yeah, like it was good. I like Steve Jobs, but yeah, go ahead, make your point. We have got to.
No, I was just gonna say. Let me explain how marketing works. If you give things, Apple doesn't include a web. Let me do this. We'll go to the break, then I'll talk about it briefly without the music on. And I want to explain something about marketing to everybody. A lesson from Apple right after this on The Backstory.
Stuck in traffic? No problem. Stay informed. Stay tuned to Radio Sputnik on 105.5 FM or 1390 AM in the Washington, D.C. area. Need more? Follow us on Facebook or check us out on SputnikNews.com.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime.
I like beer. Yeah, we drank beer.
Whoever's in charge, and I want the report.
Let's talk about that.
Discussing all the controversies and news across the disunited states of America. Tune in to Fault Lines every weekday from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern, only on Radio Sputnik.
In a media landscape filled with so-called journalists acting as stenographers for their billionaire bosses, there is a desperate need for news, analysis, and perspectives that buck the status quo and get to the heart of how domestic and international events impact you and me, as well as showing how we can get involved in the struggle to change that status quo. Check out By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, to hear the stories and voices that mainstream media refuses to tell you. And join us as we connect the political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us. That's By Any Means Necessary, Monday through Friday at 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Radio Sputnik.
Hi, I'm political analyst Garland Nixon.
And I'm political scientist, author, and nationally syndicated columnist Dr. Wilmer Leon.
We're the co-hosts for The Critical Hour, airing Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C.
We close out your day with a thorough and hard-hitting analysis of the day's top stories, where we bring in brilliant scholars, authors, and investigative journalists from around the world.
And on Fridays, it's panel time, when we do a roundup of the week's most important issues.
Join us to keep up with the world's top stories.
Enjoy an in-depth analysis.
And have a little fun along the way. Listen to our show,
The Critical Hour, Monday through Fridays on Radio Sputnik.
And we are back, 105.5 FM, AM 1390 in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I'm Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. Joining us now from RT, and I'll do my marketing thing, but I want to talk about the news business with the great Manila Chan. Hey, Manila, how you doing today?
Hey, Lee. Happy Lunar New Year.
Yes, it's the year. It's what is it? The spider? What is it?
The tiger.
You know?
Tiger.
Tiger's close to spider, sort of. They both have an eye in them. So, yeah, it's the year of the tiger. That's just happening, right? Lunar New Year is just happening in the past day or so, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, as I understand Lunar New Year, or as I understand the menus I've seen at some Chinese restaurants, it seems like they cycle. Like if it's the year of the tiger now, it'll be the year of the tiger again in, I'm making it up, 8 or 12 years or something. Is that the way it works? They cycle?
Yeah, it's 12 years. So when you're, say it's your birth year, the year of the tiger, that's your year. So I don't know if you're where you fall, Lee, but I'm year of the monkey. I'm quite the monkey.
Well, our congratulations in order? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it makes sense that I'm a monkey and a journalist because it just fits. You got to read your Chinese horoscope profile, and it'll make all the sense in the world.
Yes. Now I wanted to talk to you about something I teased it before, and I want to do a little bit of a preface about marketing lesson from Apple. but it fits into the news because what I said in the first hour was I think that this Russia war narrative has been hugely successful because the point of it to me is to push a negative narrative about Russia and Putin. And they've got everybody in the media repeating phrases like amassed on the border. You know, you've heard of those drinking games, Manila, where when someone says a certain phrase, you're supposed to do a shot, right? I'm not saying you participated, but you've heard of those drinking games, correct?
Absolutely. I always abstained from those while in college. Just saying.
Now, if your phrase right now was amassed on the border, you'd be hammered before 10 a.m. every day, wouldn't you? Am I correct? Don't they use that phrase over and over? How many times have you heard amassed on the border?
Well, yeah, Lee, I mean, the mainstream media is just a bunch of stenographers for the DOD, for the White House, for the CIA, and all the other three-letter agencies. So I would say that the American public right now, by and large, is drunk with false narratives because this is just coming directly from the government. There's no critical thinking. There's nothing involved here. It's just parroting all these talking points from Jen Psaki every day. So, of course, everybody is going to say the same lines over and over and over. And amassed on the border is one of those trigger words.
It is. And I want people to understand how this works because to understand the sophistication of American propaganda, it helps to understand advertising. So I was saying Apple's brilliant at marketing. And one of their principles is that if you buy a Mac, you know, like I've got a couple of MacBooks. I've got a MacBook Air, one of the new M1s ones, and I've got an older one. But my MacBook, first off, it's not a laptop. It's a MacBook. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really, it's a laptop. But Apple doesn't sell laptops. They sell MacBooks. And it does not have a webcam built in. Because what it's got, no, it does not. What it's got is an iSight camera. And what the marketing trick here is if you're selling something, give it a unique name. So if everybody sells laptops, everybody, Dell, Microsoft, right, everything else. But only Apple sells a MacBook. A MacBook is a laptop made by Apple. That's all it is. An iSight camera is a webcam. That's what it is. But by giving something a unique name, I think you know this from advertising, and it's the same thing. If you're opening a restaurant, don't sell a hamburger. If Saul opened, our engineer, multifaceted engineer, sell the Saul burger. Does that make sense? Give it a name.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It's branding. It's all about branding.
Exactly right. And this war is being branded. Amassed on the border, Russian aggression. These phrases are repeated not accidentally. They're repeated on purpose. So let me say this, too. Now, you've been in the news business some time, and you know this with other networks. Nobody has sent out to you at RT, and nobody's ever done it here at Sputnik. And I think it's better, but we're not up on the latest. But other news networks, in fact, do this. Fox is good at that. Remember when Fox said, we're no longer going to refer to suicide bombings, but we're going to call them homicide bombings?
Gosh, I don't remember that one. Depends on the color of the perpetrator, I suppose, right?
They announced for a while that they were no longer going to use that phrase. But no one has ever said to you at RT, hey, Manila, every time you refer to Vladimir Putin, we want you to say, noted peacemaker Vladimir Putin. You need to use that phrase every time. Right?
No, absolutely not. I get no talking points from anybody anywhere. And I obviously I have TVs on all around me all day. So I click around and listen and watch what all the other channels are saying, what they're doing. And when it comes to Russia, I don't care if it's Fox, if it's MSNBC, if it's CNN, if it's even CBS. It does not matter. The talking points are the same. It is uniform. There is, I mean, I think if you do further research, you know, there are a handful of large corporations who will say donate some money, corporations and people like Bill Gates, who actually spreads his wealth all around all the different media networks. So you're going to get a lot of these same talking points because the money is being funneled from just a handful of places. So yeah, it makes no difference at this point what channel you're watching that's on the mainstream outlets. It's going to be the same stuff because the same money coming from the same people. So,
and I want people to understand, because it's kind of a joke, like in crude propaganda, but we are sort of crude in America. In crude propaganda, you would hear things like "great leader," right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll hear some companies referred to every time they talk about the president. They say "great leader." I think they do that in North Korea, yeah. Right? But
yes, I often like to refer to Vladimir Putin as the omnipotent one because, you know, that's totally what I do, Lee.
No, but I'm saying American media does that. We actually do.
Yes,
a mast on the border is our equivalent. Or, you know, the other phrase, don't get this in the drinking game either, and you're in trouble, Manila. If you had to take a shot every time you heard the phrase Russian disinformation, you'd be face down, correct?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. That would not be a good night for me. I'll tell you that. After working at RT for, you know, once upon a time, we were a very lauded and loved and respected network. And it happened when Trump came into office and the whole Steele dossier stuff happened. And before you knew it, RT was the disinformation arm of the Kremlin. We get our directives straight from Vladimir Putin. He calls, you know, I have a bat phone in my office that he calls directly to me. That's basically how it's painted by the mainstream media. So yes, if that were a drinking game, I would be dying of alcohol poisoning.
No, and please don't do that, because that would serve nothing. But let me ask this, Manila, too, and I want to play this quote from Mitch McConnell, because it's not just the Democrat media complex that's doing this. Mitch McConnell is all, well, let's hear that. So let's play for Manila, Mitch McConnell beating the drums of war himself.
Situation with regard to the Russians and the possibility of an invasion of Ukraine is extremely serious. My advice to the White House from the very beginning was that whatever steps we're going to take, and I'll outline the steps that I think ought to be taken, need to be taken before an invasion, not afterwards. I read that the president was huddled at Camp David Sunday with his team, and what I've been hearing since then is encouraging, that they're prepared to take steps before an incursion, not afterwards. I've not been near the news this morning, so I'm not sure what additionally may have occurred, but it appears to me the administration is moving in the right direction.
Now, part of what I think Mitch McConnell's talking about, Manila, and tell me if you agree, is that they're now talking, the narrative has shifted slightly, where they're going to sanction Russia even if they don't invade, which they're not going to invade. There's never an invasion. It's a lie. And I want to be very clear about that. I'm saying it bluntly. Do you agree with me? Would you agree with me that it's a lie that Russia was ever planning to invade?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole point of having any diplomatic talks is that you are going to take one another's words at face value and operate based on that. But when you hear Republicans as well as Democrats beating the same drum, marching to it, marching our men and women to a potential conflict with Russia when Russia never asked to have any NATO soldiers amassed at their western border. There's something wrong here. I just heard on Fox the other day from Dana Perino, who was at one time the press secretary under George W. Bush. She said a probable, imminent. Now, those two words cancel each other out, Lee. I'm not sure. I mean, you would think she's a pretty adept press secretary. So for her to say a probable, imminent, those things don't make any sense. There's never been any threat from Vladimir Putin or anyone at the Kremlin that they wanted to invade Ukraine. The fact that they have troops along on their side of the border, how is that any different than having your thousands of Marines at Camp Pendleton that's near the Tijuana border of Mexico? Nobody is hooting and hollering over having Marines at Camp Pendleton, which is a few miles away from the southern border. If they're having exercises on the California side of the border, why isn't Mexico hooting and hollering? Because we're a sovereign country and we can do that on our own land. But that is somehow not applicable when it comes to the Russians, because they have to always be the boogeyman. Ever since the end of the Cold War, you would think that relations would have thawed, but unfortunately, it's taken way back beyond the Cold War. I mean, we're at the point now where the Kremlin has floated the idea of, well, how would you like it if we put arms in Cuba or we put arms in Venezuela and point them north or point them west at your country? We wouldn't like that. And here you have NATO, led by the U.S., on this campaign of saying, oh, we don't believe what Vladimir Putin says. We don't believe what Sergei Lavrov has to say. Then what is this dog and pony show of having Antony Blinken and Sergei Lavrov meet in Geneva if you're going to continually accuse them of lying through their teeth? There is no point. If the agenda is to have a NATO-led war to distract from the terrible economy, from the terrible polls that both President Biden and Kamala Harris have, then you should come up with a different story, because I think a lot of Americans are well aware that this Russian boogeyman story is getting old.
Now, let me just say this. I want to say something. What I'm about to say is literally true. The time to stop Manila Chan is before she slaps Scotty Nell Hughes in the face. So, no, but if I said that, this is the equivalent of what McConnell said. The time to stop Russia is before they invade, not after. That's true in the same way that the time to stop you is before you punch Scotty in the face. Right? In other words,
right. Hit me before I hit Scotty.
So what? But there's no threat of you punching Scotty Nell Hughes in the face, correct?
Right. I have no intention or no desire to hit Scotty.
And therefore, me bringing that up is a loaded statement. I'm implying that you were about to. And so when McConnell says the time to take steps against Russia is before they invade Ukraine rather than after, well, duh, right? If they were about to invade, the time to stop them would be before. But they're not about to invade.
Lee, let me ask you this, though, from that soundbite of Mitch McConnell. My phone might have dropped, but maybe I missed it. I don't recall him saying specifically that was a sanctions issue. It sounded to me, and maybe it was my perception of it, but it sounded to me like he was talking about taking kinetic action and that he wanted to literally strike Russia before Russia struck NATO, before Russia struck Ukraine, because NATO, we all know, Ukraine is not a member of. So to me, it sounded like McConnell was egging on a war, an actual physical kinetic war.
Well, here's what I'm saying. So if me sitting here, you're right. He didn't specify what action should be taken. He didn't say we should limit it to sanctions. But let me say this. You know that there's a bipartisan group of senators right now who are working on a deal. This is absolutely happening to sanction Russia now before there's any invasion. They're getting the sanctions proposal all set. And so it's 100%. What I'm willing to say is 100% clear. I would bet money we're about to sanction Russia. I wouldn't bet money we're about to have a military confrontation with them. I think it's entirely possible. And I think we are ginning things up that way. But you've seen this sanction proposal making its way through committees and everything right now, right, Manila?
I know that there are murmurings about that happening. I know both parties are united in their hate on Russia at the moment. But if we were to take anyone's word at face value, Antony Blinken has said over and over, the Secretary of State has said that they have sanctions in mind as punishment should Russia invade or have any, quote, minor incursions into Ukraine. It didn't sound like they were preemptive sanctions, but now you have folks on Capitol Hill taking a different tack. So I'm not sure if folks in Congress are having direct conversations with Antony Blinken, but it sounds like they need to get on the same page.
But yeah, and I agree with that, and that's a good point. What I'm saying is, I would be willing to bet that sanctions are in the offing, because you're right. And what they're going to do is here's the other thing. The American public has shown, and do you agree with me on this? The American public has shown, while they don't like the idea of war, they really don't care about the sanctions, because Democrats under Biden are doing them, and Republicans under Trump did them too. Trump never made a sanction he didn't like. He sanctioned people over and over again. Right? Am I missing something, or was Trump sanction happy as well?
Oh gosh, he was sanction happy like no other. It was like Oprah giving out cars to everybody in her audience, right? It was sanction for you, sanction for Venezuela, sanction for this guy and that country and that gal. That is a terrible foreign policy. That is not a foreign policy. That is not a sustainable foreign policy if you wish to create any peace in the world in the future. When the problem, I think, with the American population not kind of being ambivalent towards sanctions is, one, they themselves do not feel the immediate impacts of what sanctioning does to another country or the people of that country. For example, if you continue to sanction Iran, like the Trump administration did in the throes of the start of this pandemic, sure, it looks like you're being a strong man against the leadership, the Ayatollah of Iran, but what it translates to is a lack of medical supplies to the people of Iran, some food to the people of Iran, some electronics to the people of Iran. Now, we don't get to see the actual fallout from when sanctions are actually issued. So I think that's what's causing the ambivalence within the American people. It sounds like diplomatic rhetoric to American people. We don't see the actual outcomes of what happens when a country is sanctioned by the U.S. And that's what we do all around the world. And the sanctions are meant to turn the people of that country against the leaders of that country. That is the whole reason the sanctions are put in place, or they're enacted, is to actually starve out and deliberately harm that population. So when the U.S. is talking about, or in this case, the Senate and congressmen are talking about sanctioning Russia, sanctioning Vladimir Putin, none of that is going to hurt Vladimir Putin. He'll be just fine. What that's going to do is ultimately trickle down and impact the innocent people of Russia. And in this case, none of the Russians have actually broken any laws, whether you're in leadership or you're just the average civilian. Nobody's broken any laws in the way of harming Ukraine in any way. So sanctions do have an end result that people do not see, because it's just Why would the mainstream media report that? Because they're cheerleading whoever is in the White House. So we're not going to see those end results. War is tangible. You can see it. Missiles fly, blood is shed, and that sells, and that gets people's attention. But the slow harm and the slow death that is placed on the people of any country when the U.S. uses sanctioning in place of true diplomacy, that doesn't sell because it's a slow, slow death for those people.
Now, let's bring up a couple of things. We're talking about Tony Blinken. Just before the Year of the Tiger, he met with Chinese officials and was trying to get, and this is a bizarre play on Blinken's part, he was trying to get China's support against Russia, correct? I mean, that's what he was trying to do. And
I don't know if he was trying. I think he was just at least trying to get in the good graces of Xi Jinping.
But he got shut down like a bad love connection day with Chuck Woolery. He got shut down completely. China not only came out and said, basically, no, we're not going to help you, but they bolstered their support in their statements. What did you think about the reaction of what China said to Blinken after his attempt to make a pass at China over the Russia issue? Go ahead, Manila.
I really love, I do love that analogy, Lee, because you're right. It's kind of like Antony Blinken was trying to court Xi Jinping away from Vladimir Putin. Like, hey, you know, I know we've had a falling out the last couple of years, but we've changed. America has changed. There's new leadership in the White House. We're much cooler now. You want to come this way? And Xi Jinping was like, no, I think you have taken me on one too many bad dates. I'm going to try my hand over here in my sphere of the world. This date is much closer in my region. I don't have to travel down 495 to the other end of town, right? Like, this is on my side of the world. So I'm going to try my hand over here because you guys have burned me one too many times. So I'm going to try dating Russia for a little while and see how that goes. So I find that a perfectly fitting analogy because it is a bad love connection. The U.S. and China have been at odds for a long time, and the Chinese are going to play this smart. They've seen historically how the U.S. has treated their other love connections, and we burn them every time. So I don't blame them for throwing shade at Tony Blinken's way.
And they really did. They went out. It seems to me that China went above and beyond what they need to do diplomatically in shutting down the U.S. in their statements. They were pretty harsh, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that's because we currently have, this economic war happening still. In case people forgot, the U.S. and China have still not brokered any sort of deals about trade. So you have this underlying pre-existing condition, we'll say. So they went above and beyond to kind of dig the knife in, I guess you could say, a little more, dig it in and turn a little bit, because they know at the end of the day that the U.S. is still going to greatly need to rely on China until, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but until the U.S. can bring manufacturing back to our shores, China can say and do whatever they want to the U.S., and the U.S. is largely going to have to take it because we don't have any manufacturing ability at this time.
And Manila, with that, we are out of time. Manila Chan, great job. Tell people they can listen to your show over on RT there in question. When is?
You can find me Monday through Friday at 12, 1, 2, and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, download our portable TV app because then you can watch my show anywhere, anytime.
Always great talking to Manila Chan. Thanks so much to her. Thanks so much to Austin Pelly from Fault Lines for joining us in the first hour. Thanks to Owl Killer. Thanks to Sharif. Thanks to Ingrid. Thanks to Saul. Thanks to Rod. We'll see you tomorrow on the best damn radio show in the world. I'm Lee Stranahan. This has been The Backstory.
listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
Good evening. Welcome to the Critical Hour. We're coming to you from the capital of the United States.